Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Pint Sports Podcast. My name is Tick. I am the host of today's program, and joining me as always, Tony Holtnagel.
Hello.
And Boof Warren.
How are you, Tick?
I'm doing fantastic. Now, fellas, it's been a while since we've done a podcast. We've never done one together.
No. Hey, mate, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to see you.
And it is something that I do want to bring up. You'll notice, long-time listeners of the podcast will notice that I'm not Goldie. And if you did listen to the last podcast, what you'd also realise is that Goldie was having a pretty big chop at me when I wasn't here. So that absence, it's come about.
I don't think he thought you'd watch the episode.
Well, I watch every episode. I'm the number one fan, number one listener. So what we did was we had a bit of soul searching. We kind of talked about it and realised that negativity that Goldie was bringing towards me wasn't good for the podcast. So we've decided to give him the flick. And I'm the new host, and Boof's the new permanent right-hand man.
I feel this is right. Everything feels right in the world having you here and that Aaron.
Yeah, whatever. Let's forget about that guy. No, that's not true. It has been about a month off. We've had a few issues with technology, sickness, work, other bits and pieces. You've been gallivanting down in Melbourne for a few weeks.
Yeah. I was in Melbourne all last week, else we probably would have snuck in a podcast then, but
What were you doing down there?
Heading down to watch round one of the Blue Baggers playing
nice.
Richmond. Great week. Goldie was with me, actually. So, a few beers, a bit of sport.
So all is well in the pint world. We're still all friends. It's just that sometimes life gets in the way. Some of us are friends.
The jury's out.
So we've got a big episode today. We're going to be covering the goings-ons of round one for the AFL, along with the first three rounds of the NRL. But this week we thought we'd just start off by going into the archives or maybe more current and thinking about our favourite sports documentaries that we've seen either recently or long ago. So I've noticed that recently there's a lot of good sports documentaries showing up on a lot of those streaming services. So last year they had The Last Dance was a pretty popular one that most people got into. I know there's a new one now with the Dolphins, Dawn of the Dolphins. There's a Breakpoint for tennis. Golf's got one as well. They're all kind of popping up, these real fly-on-the-wall documentaries. But I've been watching a lot of sports documentaries while I've been sick a little bit, so I've really got into a few. Wolf, how about we start with you? What's your number one? My number one, tossed and turned here. I'll give you my number two first, because I won't speak about it. It was the Show Me the Money, the AFL off-season trade. That really interested me. The behind-the-doors type stuff. But my number one... Because that one that you're referring to there, it's a lot of... Is it journalists or the player managers or something like that?
Yeah, the player managements and the agents, and there's a bit of journo stuff in there as well, but it's mostly them trying to get the deals done, the lastminute.com. We want to send X player, and we're willing to send this draft pick, but in return we want this guy and this draft pick. And there's just that back and forth, and you actually get the players' views and opinions.
So the players are involved in it as well?
Yeah, it's them saying... Yep, I want to go. This is the reasons why. It's family. It's to further my career or whatnot. And I really enjoy that. Trade period is one of my probably favourite times of the year with footy.
Especially when you're a Carlton fan. That's basically our grand final every year.
Yeah, because after round 23, I'm normally not watching footy anymore because I'm pretty sure it stops.
So is the trade period something that's for the next year?
For the following year.
Yeah, so they don't do kind of a mid-season.
It's called hope.
Yeah, so
so you're towards the end of the season, you need something to look forward to.
Yeah,
that's what brings it. I like it.
I actually really want to watch this, but how do you watch it? Is it on a streaming service?
This one's on Stan. Show Me the Money 2 is coming out hopefully very soon, actually. Like the season started, I thought it might have been out already. There is a trailer on Stan at the moment for Show Me the Money 2. I can't wait to watch it.
Very good. But your number one?
My number one is The Test.
Yes.
Season 1 and 2. Season 1, 8 episodes. This is on Prime Video.
Yep.
I really enjoyed Season 1, 8 episodes. I went behind the scenes, as we was discussing before. It was after Sandpaper Gate.
Yeah, so a real big moment in
massive.
Australian Test history. You haven't checked it out, have you?
No, I
you know
still
what
haven't
happened,
seen
right?
Oh,
Yeah.
vaguely.
You got an idea of the context of it.
Yeah, they doctored the footage of Cam Bancroft having a bit of sandpaper.
Because it basically started that Test series, didn't it?
Yeah.
So it started from there. You got the whole Sandpaper Gate thing. You got the rise of JL. You got Tim Payne coming in as captain as well. So
and you had all the backlash of Steve Smith, David Warner, and Cam
the
Bancroft.
Ashes over in England with the concussions.
Yeah, Smudge going out. Labuschagne coming into the Test match. He'd already played before, but coming in and I think within 3 balls he caught one on the helmet as well.
Yep.
And there was a lot going on, but I love that backdoor stuff.
Like while those things are happening, you've got that background of what's happening in the dressing sheds that you never otherwise see.
So the Test season 1, Langer's there the whole piece?
Yep.
Well, I think he comes in at the start of it because I think Sandpaper Gate happens.
Yeah.
Lehman's
So the
there.
Langer fallout is the Test season 2.
Yeah, so it kind of wraps up perfectly in a season that the very start of season 2 is the Tim Payne sexting scandal.
Yep.
So Cummins is captain from, it's basically the Gabba
It
Test.
starts at the Gabba. There was some footage of a lot of blokes in white shirts there as well at the Gabba on day 4.
Yes, the famous Gabba troopers.
Yeah, they were there on day 4, rowdy as ever. But I really enjoyed the the locker room stuff, the chats that the players have. You got to see the way that JL coached and how he's not your, I've got my arm around you, buddy. We're going to get through this together. You need to sort it out. We need to be better. There's it's
real warts and all. It's not sugar coated.
There's definitely a lot of love there from the coach to the players, but it's the 80s, 90s style coaching.
Yep.
What he grew up getting coached as being a hard nut, and that's why he was so tough as a player.
Well, it was kind of important to our whole evolution as a Test team as well to kind of get that bit of hardness into us.
Does it come across in the documentary like he is micromanaging? Or
it probably just comes across he's really stern. He's very stern. He's very... I know they always say he's very intense, but that intensity does come across in the doco.
A lot of, my way or highway. And that then in season 2 is... they don't really go into the fallout as much as in...
Yeah, it's kind of skirted around a little bit.
Yeah, they don't talk about, the players not wanting him and all that. He did all that stuff for himself in the media, post it, trying to look after, staying relevant, trying to stay in the media and that sort of stuff. But
it probably tracks more Cummins.
Yeah,
his
rise.
ascent to captaincy and the way that, a lot of people have a bit of a negative opinion of Cummins for, his political views or otherwise. And I feel like when you watch that, you really get a good essence of what he's like as a captain and as a leader as well. So
there's one scene in the second one that I really enjoy. It's probably because I'm a little bit biased, being a proud South Australian that I am, that Travis Head and Alex Carey are down the pub having a beer together, chatting cricket. You get to see them not as just these famous cricketers. You get to see them in their day-to-day life. Don't get me wrong, it's probably put on a little bit, when they go into Cummins' house and he's got his wife and his kid there.
Yeah.
They're all dressed nice.
The house is clean.
Playing with the kid, making sure everything's
when they're at the pub, was Alex Carey just talking about how to sweep?
He was having he was having reverse shandies.
He was actually cleaning the pub.
A pint of lemonade with a dash of beer in it. He's like, I just do everything in reverse.
But that would be my definitely number one. I haven't been a big sports doco watcher, but I really enjoy the background stuff.
Well, when it's something that you do love, as we all do with Test cricket, it's good to have that little extra bit because season 2 definitely went into the players a bit more as well. You got a good insight, and I think one of the best things of that second season was the blow-ups of the batsmen when they're getting out and coming back into the sheds, throwing their bats, swearing, and like that bit you didn't see but you heard. So they'd walk into the dressing room and you just hear fuck and then just throwing
Warner every match.
Well, he got out a lot as he does. He's an over, of course, but
Stevie Smith's one was just a ripper. Last point on it, Stevie Smith, he's got out and he's thrown his gear down. There's no one around him. There's just a camera on him and he's sitting there, how do you get out of this shit, Smudge? You're so bad at cricket. Why are you even fucking playing this game? Jesus Christ, mate! You're one of the best batsmen in the world. You get out once and you think you got to retire.
I think you got 150 that game.
Off only 60 balls as well. But that was mine.
Good pick. I loved it.
Thank you very much.
Holshy, what do you got for us?
Okay, so similar to what Boof just said, I haven't watched many. It's not because I don't want to. I just haven't happened to. I put movies ahead or watching live sport. But just listening to Boof makes me want to watch those too. Everyone's been telling me about the test. But the Show Me the Money one actually has me really intrigued because I've always watched the draft so carefully sort of to know what's happening in the background. It'd be great. But so my pick, there's a series out there called 30, I think it's 30 for 30.
Yeah, 30 for 30.
30 for 30, that the ESPN Sports pieced together, and it's a collection of different episodes about all sorts of different topics by sort of filmographers or whatever that have decided over a number of years to pull together footage of something that they're particularly interested in. And the one that I really love is called Survive
and Advance.
Yes. Survive and Advance.
Or Advance, if you're from Adelaide.
Yes, Advance.
So it was one that I watched with no expectations, and it stuck with me at the end. And I don't really want to divulge so much in it if anyone is interested in watching out there. But
it is somewhat recent, isn't it? It's in the last decade or so that they made it. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. The actual...
the event was back in
the event was 1983,
Yep.
but the episodes were all pulled together sort of in the last decade. But it revolves around an NC State, so I think that's North Carolina State, Wolfpack college basketball team. And this team, even today, like no one would know basically any of the names of these basketballers. And they scraped into the final series of March Madness, which is like the big college basketball tournament. So they play sort of in a conference or an area, and then if they get into a certain position, then they can go into this big bracket. And to win it, you have 9 do-or-die matches. Now, back in the 80s, at this point in time, there was no shot clock. So it was very different. But this particular college, I guess, era coming through. So this team had to beat sides that had names like Michael Jordan, Clyde Drexler.
You've heard of him?
Yeah, he played a bit of baseball, didn't he?
No, he's the actor. He's an actor.
Yeah, sorry.
Hakeem Olajuwon, these guys. And this team gets this new coach, and this coach is a real character, almost a comedian more so than a coach he appears. But it ends up he has this great mind, and there's these developments as they go along and have to win each of these games that it is mind-blowing. And I think they're losing in like the last minute of 7 of the 9 games. And it's an amazing
story. They win most of them by a point as well. Like it's all just
they're all
super tight.
Right down to the end. And there's one particular game that really stuck with me, and I don't actually want to say the reason, but it's something that now you see teams do all the time. But back then, so the coach's name is Jim Valvano, and he just came up with it in the middle of this game because they were getting trounced. And it was, at the time, it was like everyone in the media is like, what's this guy doing? This isn't basketball.
Yeah.
But they came back and won it. And once again, I won't go into it, but he eventually got cancer and passed away. And just before he passed away, he got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he has this amazing speech that's well known right through US sport. So just if anyone's interested in that, it is just something that a great underdog story, which we all love, but at the same time, just little bits of history through it, especially if you're into basketball.
I'm not into basketball. You told me about this afternoon, and I just read a little plot summary of basically the documentary, what it was about, watched a 40-second clip of, the moment that inspired the documentary effectively. And I went, this is fascinating. This sounds fantastic. Like the reason that they came about to make the documentary, the guys so I think it was Derek Wittenberg and Lorenzo Charles, it was the moment. When they started to make the documentary, I think it was Derek Wittenberg had the idea. they were going to get them all together. Lorenzo passed away like a week later or something like that. It was just this. They kind of were arranging a reunion, but then it ended up being the funeral is where the kind of starting point.
Yeah, it starts with all the guys getting together at a pub, and then the story sort of unfolds. But
well, if it's 30 for 30, I'm pretty sure they're on KO. So if they are,
a follow-up question: where can we? I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued.
And Jim Valvano actually I could see Tick being this coach that's come in.
Yeah, the comedian that can't coach.
Yeah, I know nothing about basketball.
But geez, I can make one laugh.
Sometimes.
No, watch it, boys.
Depends if you ask Goldie or not.
What's yours, Ticker?
Mine is something I've got into very recently, actually. It's when I was sick, I started actually watching the Point Break, which was the tennis one. And the first episode, I think, concentrated heavily on Kyrgios. And I just watched the test as well. And I was just in this little vibe of really enjoying sports docos. And a friend of mine had recommended a little while ago Drive to Survive being a good documentary to watch. Now, it follows Formula One races, so it basically follows a season. You get insights into the drivers, the team principals, everything that goes on behind the scenes. About 3 episodes in, I was hooked. There's 5 seasons of it. I've binged the lot, but I'm halfway through season 5 at the moment.
Wow.
But as you kind of went on and started to learn a bit more about the drivers and just understanding a little bit more about how Formula One works and the dynamics that go behind it, I went from someone who's got no interest in motorsport whatsoever to going, geez, I'm kind of excited for the Formula One season to start now because I've got a bit of a grasp about what makes it tick. I then watched a KO mini of the first Formula One, which was in Bahrain, I think, recently. And I was bored about 10 minutes in.
So it kind of worked, but then it just didn't work at all.
It was just the way it was shot, the drama behind it.
You can picture a similar doco for the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Like that breakdown of there's so much more to it than just the individual skill set.
Yeah. Well, that's it, because the whole team's involved in it. Well, how are they making the car? What's changing? What's McLaren doing that Red Bull's not? Or, the end of the season, they bring out new rules and they're changing the cars. And as the season goes, you kind of see the rise of Max Verstappen and Red Bull kind of going past Mercedes and Hamilton because Hamilton was on such a big streak, and you slowly see these youngsters come through over that five seasons as well, because Ricciardo was one of the biggest draw cards of the whole series because he was just such a fun, happy character kind of thing. Yeah. So you're drawn to him immediately, but guys like Pierre Gasly, Charles Leclerc, that they kind of make their way up the standings.
Have you boys seen Ford vs Ferrari, the movie?
No.
It sounds like obviously in an earlier era, but very similar it's not going to be as detailed, but about how Ferrari, all the little details of their car and how they were continuously like the upper echelon, no one was going to beat them, and how the other cars had to slowly build their way into this.
There's Mick Schumacher's son is in this as well. He's driving as well. So you get a bit of that history as well where what I think I didn't realise was, and it must have just been something that was on the news quite often, was that sound of the commentary, is so etched in your brain that you don't even realise it. And then when you hear it, you go, yeah, I'm kind of into this commentary a little bit, just those moments where they pass or whatever and the voice goes up. But, the characters is what really made that show. And the team principals in particular, like Christian Horner from Red Bull, I think Gunther Steiner he's with Haas now, and Toto Wolff with Mercedes, just great for TV characters. There's one episode, I think it's episode 10 of season 4. I watched it about 3 times. The drama of the race itself was pretty epic. But seeing those team principals just kind of really rising with emotion, it was just, it really grabbed me. So something that you can enjoy even if you don't like Formula One.
I was going to say, you nearly had me, but there's something about cars driving around in a circle that...
Mate, I'm the same.
If I need to go to sleep at night, and I'll make this
this isn't Daytona, though. This isn't a oval type one.
It's just...
I was the same.
On Bathurst, I can't get around. I make... a friend of the show, Jason Patterson, anytime that I go around to his place and he's watching V8s or some sort of motor racing, I just lay on his couch and go, just wake me up when it's done, mate. It puts me to sleep. But it sounds very much like the test, and
I think it's that knowledge behind, like you said, those little intricacies that you'd never consider. Because my sister's big into V8 supercars, and I text her saying, "I get motorsport now. I still don't like
I'm on board,
but I understand what makes it so."
But how many sports are like that? People bag a certain sport, but once you understand it, you know, sports like baseball, AFL, rugby union, like they get bagged because I'm a league fan, or you know, I'm not a league fan, but depending on what you know, that's what you love. But it's because you don't know these other sports.
And that's what Drives to Survive has done for Formula One. It's brought new fans in, you know, because people are watching it like myself. Okay, I'm not going to get right into it, but I am keeping an eye on results now because I'm somewhat invested in these races.
And do you think this doco will it continue to produce more seasons? So it'll be an ongoing.
I believe it's such a success that I can't see how it wouldn't. And I think if you know, particularly with our two, where it's a current kind of thing, you know, the more of these that they make, the more people are just going to love them, and it builds up your brand as well. So
it was a friend recommended to me Hard Knocks, which is an NFL, which has been now going for 18 seasons, where each year they pick a certain side and they go behind the scenes. And it sounds similar, like all these sports have realised maybe we can have documentary TV shows following the background. And, you know, fans and non-fans alike will, you know, come on board through it.
I can see, you know, those bigger clubs like in Australia producing their own content for these kind of things, like not putting it out to an outside party to go, hey, we've got the funds to do a documentary on our own season.
The Test, season 24.
There you go. Another one I want to recommend is this is an unusual one. It's not necessarily sport, but it's called The King of Kong.
This is
full of quarters. It's
the
about
greatest.
Yeah, it's about these guys. They're playing video games, but it is set up in a competitive environment.
Billy.
Yeah, I can't remember. I've watched it a while ago, and I was looking up sports documentaries today. Really fascinating. I think it's on YouTube, so check
watch
that
it.
out. It's really interesting.
It's about Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong. It starts with sort of Snake or one of the other ones first, and then, and it's ferocious.
It's basically this journey to kind of get the highest score.
You're gonna have to send me a link to that one.
Yeah, it's really good.
So. It's a cult classic. I've got a shirt with Billy on it.
There you go. He's a unique looking dude.
He's a bit of a tool.
All right, so that's enough about what we've been watching and what we've been doing and all those kind of things. Let's get back into something a bit more current.
I love that.
Round 1 of the AFL. What happened?
Well,
the Blues.
Start with Thursday night.
The Blues can't lose, but they can't win either.
Well, we didn't lose, so that's a positive. Unfortunately, we went away with the 2 points from the game. We split the points with the Tigers, 58-58.
And the goals and behinds were identical as well.
They were.
Interesting. So, I don't know.
Yeah. Numerology, I'm sure that Cameron Mooney spoke about it on the bounce last night. It was tough. Me and Holshy have covered this today in the number 1 podcast around the world at the moment. So we won't delve into it too much. We had a draw, but then the following night was a great game of footy between Geelong and Collingwood. Probably not the result that everyone expected, though, Holsh.
Yeah, look, Geelong-Collingwood match was the match of the round, and Collingwood, to their credit, came running over the top of the premiers. But the talking point coming out of it was the MCG surface after Ed Sheeran had his 2 concerts on it.
Same thing happening at Suncorp.
Yeah, so they had to re-turf approximately half the field in 1 week. And in the Blues game the night before, which I was at, 88,000 people, people were slipping over, but luckily no injuries. But then that next night, one of the guys had quite a serious knee injury, and another guy had to go off with a knee injury, Tom Stewart and Sam de Koning. Luckily, Sam de Koning came back on, but it was sort of a theme throughout the weekend that this turf was loose to run on, all on the back of Ed Sheeran, the concerts, what do you call the people that run these concerts? Promoters said, "Look, we'll have the concerts and we'll pay for the returfing." They probably made enough out of these 2 Ed Sheeran concerts.
Timing wise, I don't know if you've laid turf before. A week's not enough for it to take hold.
They had the same thing in
Adelaide as well.
I've got a lot of different grass.
The grass doctor. But in that game as well, Jeremy Howe, who's an outstanding defender, had snapped his arm in a compound fracture, and it literally was that horrific to watch that they wouldn't replay it. There was nothing on social media. So he's in surgery today, I believe, and he's, it could be career ending.
The only photo I seen they put up was actually him in the air.
Yeah.
So it's before he's hit the ground. It's not a good
Come
photo.
down on the arm, did he? Or?
Yeah, he's come down on the arm, and I don't want to go into it too much
Right.
because it was quite gross. And I couldn't put myself through rewinding it to have a look again. So hopefully for Jeremy, he can come back, but probably be
brutal.
Pretty good story if he does come back. I don't know
Any
what his
other
chances are.
surprises out of the weekend?
Yeah, and I think the other big story from the weekend is two of the teams have acquired in the off-season three teams have acquired very high-profile new coaches.
Yes.
That being North Melbourne have got Alistair Clarkson, who coached the Hawthorn dynasty. Ross, the boss,
He's down at Saints
Ross
now.
Lyon, who was at the Saints when they lost their semi, and they were a very, very good team back in 2010. He went to Fremantle, then he was in media for a while, and then the Saints have got him back. So he's taken over the Saints again, and then Brad Scott, one of the Scott brothers who he used to coach North Melbourne's taken over Essendon. All three of those sides touted to be bottom four. All three sides won.
Right.
On the back of these new coaches. So it just,
Quite often, I'm not an AFL guy, but in league as well, you quite often find, mid-season sackings the next, because they're usually not going well. The next game, they're up for the new coach.
I was going to say that. I'd love to see the stat on it where a coach gets sacked, the interim comes in. I'd love to see the stat of how many percentage-wise them games get won, because I reckon it would be reasonably high.
And usually those teams aren't going too good.
Yeah,
so
you're not sacking a coach that's coming first, are you?
Exactly.
Unless there's a big scandal.
Yep.
But it'll be interesting to see, in 6, 7, 8 weeks' time into the season, if those teams continue to show a significant higher level to their game, because how important are coaches, I think the Sydney Swans in the AFL are one of those teams. They've got who I think's the best coach, John Longmire, and they keep bringing through young guns, and they just keep producing. And you can't help but there's no coincidence that he's he is a vital part of that cog. And there's a team in the NRL that aquatic creatures that came in this year. And when we get to the NRL section, but once again, that coach
means a lot.
Yeah,
I think it means a lot for some teams. Like some teams need a coach. Some teams probably don't necessarily need a coach, but they've got someone that
the Australian cricket team.
Exactly. You can just hum along without it, with captain, coach, whatever. So on AFL, how about we go through our tips for the Sports Whisperer?
So I've gone...
You're a Carlton man, right? Let's just...
I am very much a Carlton man, as you can tell by the tattoo on the upper arm there. I've gone Geelong to win the flag this year, and I thought I'd picked it right, and they got trounced on Friday night.
One swallow doesn't make a summer.
No.
It makes a husband very happy.
I've just going to bypass that because I wouldn't know. Charlie Curnow to win the Coleman and kick most goals this year. I kind of hope I'm wrong there. I really want Harry McCoy to get up.
Did he get any over the...
He kicked 3 on the weekend.
Okay, yep.
He looked good. And I've gone with a back-to-back Brownlow winner being Patrick Cripps. I would be surprised if he got votes this week. He may have snuck in for one, maybe, but with the umpires, you get our view, mine and Holshy Goldie's view on how the game is. But then
how do they
the
vote
umpires,
for their Brownlow? Is it one person? Is it?
So it's all 4 umpires.
Okay.
It's now 4 umpires. They come together after the game, and they do a 3-2-1.
Each umpire gets...
No, just one
Okay.
lot of 3-2-1. And then at the end of the year, they spend about 4 hours and 85 minutes working out and reading
put into
all
envelopes.
games. Yeah, they seal it.
So they don't get released...
No, so it's not. It's unlike the Dally
right.
M.
Okay.
So you got no idea until the night of the Brownlow where they read out.
God, that's such a better system than the...
Especially for betting,
Well, having the umpires do it is clever as well. The NRL's I don't know. Well, they've changed it recently to 2 people voting, which makes it a bit better. I think you get a better spread, particularly with those 1 votes where you might generally have 3 or 4 players who have been the third best, so you can kind of get a bit more of a spread.
Well, the last couple of years, the Brownlow, I don't think you could bet on the Brownlow the last 2 years since they had that umpire.
So that was last year.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah, so not being much of an AFL follower, you probably not tracking. Goldie was just, Holsh was just touching on, there was an umpire last year that, obviously umpiring games, he let slip of who he voted for.
All right.
And who got votes in games, so... It's
and you said Cripps won it. Yes. He might have been throwing gang signs or something like that.
Yeah, it could have been. It was actually doing the Crip walk.
Yes.
Up to get the Brownlow. But yeah, he that umpire since probably won't do another game again.
No, working at Woolies or something. Your tips?
Okay, my tips. So for the premiers, I've gone the Brisbane Lions.
Yeah. There's notes there. It's not on there.
No, I don't need these anymore. I went the Brisbane Lions on the back of their off-season trades, which were huge, and their draft. They picked up some young guns there. And then this week they got absolutely pummeled by Port Adelaide. I still think they're going to be one of the teams to beat when they get it all together. I think they've got a lot of depth. So I've gone Lions. For the Brownlow, I've gone Andrew Brayshaw from Fremantle Dockers, who also got flogged. Well, actually, they didn't get flogged. They just got beaten by a putrid team. The reason I went Andrew Brayshaw was last year, about 2/3 of the way through the season, he was suspected to be winning the comp. And I think he ended up coming 4th. But in the off-season, they've grabbed another young ruck who's, I think, going to be a superstar. He was a bit quiet on the weekend. But for a midfielder, having good rucks means you get good service, more ball. So I thought Angus Brayshaw, if they can win a few games, which they should, he should get plenty of ball. So I've gone him. And for the Coleman, most goals, I've gone Harry Mackay from Carlton. He only kicked 1 on the weekend, but he played really well. If he could kick straight, he's a certainty.
A drop punt rather than a snap would be nice at times.
Yeah. Do you want me to rattle off Goldie's just really quickly as well?
Yes, please.
So Goldie has gone Carlton. Mm-hmm. He's a true blue. Christian Petrarca for the Brownlow from the D's, Melbourne Demons. And I think Petrarca had a belter game on the weekend, so he would have been in the points for sure. And he's also gone Harry Mackay for the Coleman.
Yes.
Well, I was listening to you then, and Brisbane Lions sounds good, so I've gone for the Brisbane Lions, even though I picked them probably, 2 weeks ago, last week or something like that?
Well, hopefully before the season.
I've always been intrigued, being a long-term watcher of the show. So how did you come to the Brisbane Lions? Because what did you play against?
Well, they're truth tellers.
Yeah.
They got the vibe, you know?
Yep.
A good, honest team. Brizzy boys. Location-wise, they're pretty close. I enjoyed watching them in the finals last year as well. So
didn't play a game of Scrabble or something?
No. Where'd you come up with that? Anyway, my daughter and I were playing Pictionary. So
how do you play that?
So that was my tip for the premiers. The Brownlow, I've gone with Jack Steele. I like him in the Inspired Unemployed. He's really funny. So I didn't know he's an AFL player, but I like the.
You reckon he's going to steal the Brownlow off everyone else?
Well, I just think he's got it. For
he's the jack of all trades.
Yeah, that's right. I like that. That's not bad. That's why he's standing there. He's doing it right.
It's a funny spot.
And then for the Coleman medal.
Coleman.
Yeah, I've gone with someone whose name sounds a bit like Coleman and Jeremy Cameron. Did you get that right, Jeremy?
Yes, yeah, Jeremy.
Is there a Tom Cameron as well?
Tom Hawkins.
Tom Hawkins.
Yes,
team.
they are. They look kind of similar too, I think. One of them looks a bit like you, I reckon.
Which one?
I can't remember. But I
the better looking one.
I enjoyed the grand final last year, and they seem like good blokes. Both of them actually. Tom Hawkins, I think, is more your vibe. But that's why I picked them.
Yeah, I'm glad we got there. At the end.
What more do you want? I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just giving it a shot. So 3 rounds of the NRL. You got something else?
Yeah, I just got one more thing on the AFL. 3 suspensions come out of the weekend. It's a massive talking point for the AFL followers that are watching. Go and have a read of a few of the comments that are getting around. There's 3 massive hits on the weekend. Shane McAdam from the Crows. He's currently going through the tribunal at the moment for his massive hit. And then can't pronounce his first name, but his last name's Pickett. He plays for Melbourne. He's received a 2-match ban for his hit on Bailey Smith, which I don't think 2 weeks is enough, and that is my personal opinion. If you don't agree with it, come at me. He's left the ground, gone the arm, and there's cleaned up Bailey Smith. He had no chance to defend himself.
If your opinion isn't the same as Boof's, your opinion is wrong.
Exactly.
I think the opposite to you.
Pickett was pretty much channeling his namesake in Byron Pickett, who used to do the same thing all the time back in the day when he played for Port. And the other suspension this week, which is probably got 2 games, but he only got 1 because he's a bit of a protected species, would be Lance Franklin for his hit on Sam Collins. So that's just for the fantasy players out there.
Judiciary wrap there from Boof.
Yeah. You should, after the show, Tick, you should watch the Shane McAdams one. It's it just looks brutal. He lines this young guy up. He's only like 19-year-old. He's catching the ball, and you just see him like, this is going straight through your head.
Yeah.
And just goes over the top of him. His head, apparently everyone in the stadium could hear his head like snap
rattling
back.
around in his brain.
It wasn't good. And one comment that I had.
He's not the young fella who was in the white powder scandal. Something's Bailey.
No, that was Jack Ginnivan from Collingwood.
Right.
So that's to be expected. So there has been one comment in the media that has quite pissed me off. I'm not going to name the reporter. If you find the comment,
you're not going to get sued.
However, he said, his comment is along the lines of, the bump is a part of the game. These boys should not be in trouble for it. In the meantime, the AFL is currently getting sued by approximately 50 players for concussions from during their playing career. So if they don't stamp it out now, later on down the track, you're just going to have blokes just running through, elbows collecting these guys, and they're just going to continue to have concussion symptoms, and it's quite a serious thing. So,
what was the quote? The bump is a part of the game?
The bump is part of the game. The bump is a part of the game.
I guess that excuses Jack Ginnivan then, doesn't it? All right, let's move on from that shit.
Let's get away from that.
3 rounds of NRL have passed, and
it's been a great 3 rounds.
Oh, it's been a great 3 rounds if you're a Broncos fan. Woo-hoo! The 90s are back.
I'm on board.
The 90s are back. I'm telling you, there's something about this team that's getting me very excited. Thank God this bench is here. I'll tell you that much.
I can see it. It doesn't look like you're that excited.
I'm only half excited.
Oh, okay. Not that cold in here, is it?
So, yeah, I've really enjoyed the first 3 rounds, something I was pretty apprehensive coming into the season, as you are of a team who's kind of been very wildly inconsistent, to have 3 rounds of pretty good wins and good attack, exciting football as well. So
and also that off-season Cobbo business with his comments, like you were like,
I think Cobbo's a young kid. He's not media trained. He just says what comes to his head, and I just didn't
know if there was going to be like cracks, amongst the camp.
Well, you think about. Well, I'm going to talk about the Broncos because I know a bit about them. But
hang on, I'll just
That's all right. In the off season, we've got a lot of these young players. They're starting to kind of get that 50, 60, 70, 80 games where they're starting to become seasoned first graders, and that seems to have really kind of just kicked in all at the same time. So we've had that bit of suffering, and finally you've got that little bit of calmness. You've got Reynolds there, and then Walsh at the back has just revolutionised us, because I wasn't a big fan of Tessie New or Jermaine Asako. Not very smart footballers, good athletes, but don't have that little bit between the ears that makes you kind of not even just ball playing, just idiocy throughout a game of doing these dumb things where you go, you kind of don't understand even the rules of rugby league, and you're playing it at a high standard. But Walsh has got that speed. He's got that knowledge of how to ball play as well. So they've really excited me. The other big team is the Dolphins, which you mentioned before. So Wayne Bennett I think that was the guy you were talking about, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was
you would have
referring
heard
to
of
Wayne
him?
Bennett.
Is he still around, is he?
Yes. I think he's pushing 80, actually.
Yeah. I saw he was on a KO ad the other day.
He was sitting around a table or something a very interesting character, old Uncle Wayne.
Yeah. No, I think it's brilliant that the Dolphins have come in and produced like they were last in Sportsbet.
And rightly so. I mean, their spine wasn't really... You didn't look at their spine and go, geez, I'm full of confidence there. You had Hammer come down from the Cowboys. You know, he was a pretty good centre, a pretty ordinary winger. Wasn't really getting a shot at fullback. He's gone down there. He's playing fullback. He's killing it. Those two gents I mentioned earlier, Tessie New and Jermaine Asako, they both went to the Dolphins to play fullback. Both of them are on the wing. Asako's a great winger. He's not a fullback. You know, their spine, even their halves, Sean O'Sullivan, not much chop. They've got a young guy from Penrith, I think Isaiah Katoa or something like that. You know, he's young. He's going to make mistakes. He's got a bit of that kind of guide around the park, but their forward pack is really where they've bought well. And
pretty experienced.
It is, and I think the yin to the yang is they've ripped the heart out of Melbourne's forward pack, and they're struggling at the moment, which brings me a fair bit of joy.
I love that the Dolphins' first game was against the Roosters.
Yeah.
Which you couldn't have found a more contrasting. Like everyone was thinking, well, Roosters 40+ points.
Yeah.
Easy first win. You know, they're almost the most tipped team to win the competition. They were in the Sports Whisperer. And I forgot it was on the Sunday, and I've pulled out the phone and I'll just check this. I'm like, I better turn this on.
Yeah.
And to their credit, the Dolphins were the better team.
They were. The Roosters very heavily injury affected, so you know, it's one of those things. I still don't think you can judge the Dolphins on you still got to win the games, and winning games is important, but they still haven't come up against anyone. I think until this Friday will be the real litmus test to see where they sit. The Roosters had a lot of injuries. They beat the Knights, who have been on a hiding to nothing, and the Raiders as well. So Raiders have been pretty inconsistent as well this year. So
was it Milford that went to the Dolphins and didn't even make the starting lineup round one?
That's him.
And he was, you know...
Milford's going to go down as one of the greatest wasted talents in rugby league. Because when he was 21 at the Broncos in that 2015 grand final... I don't recall. But anyway, best player on the field by a long
Kyle Felt
way.
did something that day, didn't he?
Kyle
Felt down the wing.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell. Anyway, Milford, he even 2016 he came along as well, and you thought, this kid's going places. But the word around Brisbane, he's a notoriously bad trainer, doesn't, you know, diet-wise, he doesn't look after himself. He's got all the talent in the world, but just not the drive to kind of get there. So, and there's a lot of players like that in,
no wonder I'm not
in all
NRL.
competitions. You know, only the elite rise to the top, and talent can only get you so far.
So what other teams in the NRL have sort of shown like above their weight so far?
I'm probably more looking at teams who have disappointed a little. I know the Tigers, they were bottom of the table last year, but they recruited quite well. Their forward pack was a bit better. They got Coruscant in, but they have been absolutely woeful this year. They've been worse than what they were last year. You got a new coach, Tim Sheens.
Yeah. Okay.
Hasn't worked for him at all. I think
So he hasn't cleaned him up at all, has he?
No, not at all, Mr. Sheens. No.
Yeah.
What about the Bulldogs? Like, I haven't really been following it closely, but I know the last sort of 2 to 3 years they've had
moments of really good play. They were pretty bad round one against Manly, but they're starting to show a little bit as well. So, they have recruited well over the last few years. They knocked off
Melbourne, didn't they?
They did. Once again, Melbourne is very, very injury-ravaged at the moment. They're without Pappenhausen, Munster's injured. Like I said, their forward pack's been ripped out. They've got injuries on top of injuries, so they're struggling to put a team together at the moment.
Titans have won a couple too, haven't they?
They have, yes.
How have they been playing? Or
I haven't watched a lot of the Titans, but if you've watched the Titans at any stage in the past, it's the same. They're just wildly inconsistent.
Yeah, okay.
They'll show minutes of brilliance for Feeder. He's one of those players who can turn it on and then just go missing for, another 60 minutes kind of thing. So they'd want to get more out of him. They've recently re-signed him as well. Tips-wise, what about you for the NRL?
I'll kick it off. I've gone the Roosters for the premiership, and I was actually around at the in-laws on that Sunday of round one, and we chucked it on the TV. I'm like, sweet, here we go. I get to watch my premiership winning tip. Sports Whisperer, here we go. I got 10 points, already chalked it up, and watching the game going, no, they're going to turn it on here. They're going to turn it. They didn't turn it on. So I've gone them to win it. But
you couldn't begrudge the Dolphins win on that day. It was one of those things. A new team comes in and they.
I think I've jumped on the board.
Queensland too.
I've jumped on board.
Not this Friday.
I've jumped on board the Dolphins a little bit. Obviously, I'm a Cowboys supporter, so I remember that 2015 grand final quite well, actually. Does Ben Hunt still play footy at all?
I think
He does,
I think
yes.
Cowboys supporters, that's all they remember.
Yes.
Because there's
Which-
not much
'cause
else.
What other premierships do you remember for the Cowboys?
I think we won a game over in
the Sevens.
New Zealand, that Sevens thing. Didn't we win that?
I think
year?
so, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Hey,
That might have been the Hammers debut.
I'm a massive NRL fan.
Well, I can tell you
as
they've only
tell.
won one premiership. So, as I
Yep.
told my nephew the other day, as he's describing how the Cowboys won the 2015, I'm like, mate, you weren't alive for a lot of these other ones. But anyway.
I've gone Tedesco for the Dally M, and I've gone Alex Johnson for most tries. I'm unsure of how Alex has gone so far.
He's already got a few pies. I think he might 2 or 3 or something like that.
Yeah,
But he's
sweet. So stop the comp. Give me the votes.
hanging on that left
Is
edge
he,
of
is
South
he
is
on
a good shout.
that same side as Mitchell? Is he outside Mitchell?
Well, Latrell's playing at fullback, so
okay.
he'll kind of sweep. He'll be a part of that sweep play. So most of your the good picks, I suppose, for that try scoring of the year should be on the left. Most people can pass right to left a lot better. So Johnson,
My notes in there done.
Johnson's definitely one of those. I think he's one top try scorer of the last 3 or 4 years. He's very consistent. He can find the try, and he might even get to a point when he's really threatening even Ken Irvine for the most tries ever, which in today's terms is pretty spectacular.
Okay. Wow.
Holshy?
Okay, so my tips are, well, 2 tips are putrid and one's looking okay. So my premiers, I've gone with my most hated team, the North Queensland Cowboys. They were very consistent last year. They essentially kept most of their same team. I think they lost 2 players in Hammer and Gilbert.
Yep.
Who are both very good players. But
Good signing in Taumu, though.
yeah, got Taumu. But I just thought they would have settled. The coach has now got the game plan, how he wants it. Good forward pack. And anyway, so first game they just got home against Raiders, and
It's hard to get a gauge on that game. They're both awful and really good.
Yeah, and
points.
But then in the second game, which they lost to the Bronx, which I'm happy about, but they lost Drinkwater for his hit on Oates, putting Oates out for 8 to 9 weeks with a broken jaw, and the Broncos basically won that game in the 10 minutes that he was off the field.
Yeah.
It's similar to how the Bronx played on the weekend. They did it in a 10-minute burst. And with Drinkwater out, I don't know, they seem to lose a little bit of direction. He's a pretty good player from
I reckon
my stance.
Drinkwater, chance for the Dally M, I would have thought. Holsh?
So for the Dally M, I've picked Drinkwater.
Okay, right, yes. And
unfortunately, he can't win it now because he's been suspended for how many weeks?
more than 2. Well, it's more than 2 matches.
Yeah.
He's out for 3. I
3,
think.
yeah. I think it's 2 or more, yeah.
Yeah.
So mine's already null and void, and I think there was about 13 or 14 of us that tipped Drinkwater, so we're all gone. But I did pick Parramatta Eels winger, is it Micah Sevo? Micah Sevo? He had a knee injury last year, I think, and he sort of missed about half the season. But the games he did play and the season before, his tries per game was very high.
Yeah.
And so I took a risk on him that his knee was back to 100%, and hopefully the Parramatta can put on the points. And they have been putting on the points. But having said that, I did actually ask one of my best mates, Matt Geiger, to come onto the show tonight, but just to talk about Parramatta Eels season. But he declined the offer. But they've scored lots of points, mate, just because they haven't won a game.
I mean, that's not important. Winning games isn't overly important, isn't it? Well, scoring points and looking good at that period is good.
You can still make finals without winning games, can't you?
Yes, but you just need a lot of other teams to be done for salary cap breaches.
Beauty.
And the like. So
hopefully this.
Hang on, 9 teams.
Just a quick one question without notice about this Scotty Drinkwater hit on Oates. So Drinkwater got 3 games, wasn't it? And Oates is out for 8 to 9.
Yes.
How do you guys feel about one bloke only having 3, who is still fit to play, obviously can't, and then you've got Oates who misses 8 to 9 with a broken jaw?
I don't think you can dictate penalties based on injuries because Particularly that one. I mean, at the time, I was ready to send him to the gallows. Send him off, execute him. He's a dog and all that. But looking at it, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances in that tackle. A lot of excuses made for Drinkwater. What's he supposed to do? This, that, the other. There was a try in the Parramatta game against Manly the other night. I think it was the first try where almost an identical scenario where a player's coming. The fullback's coming across, the winger kind of swerves back in. Gutherson had a play at him and he scored the try. People go, what's he supposed to do? Well, the answer is not shoulder charge someone in the head. The answer is try and make a legal tackle, and if you don't, you've already been beaten on the inside anyway. So your option isn't hurt someone. And not that I don't Drinkwater's not doing that on purpose. It is a reactionary thing, but you've got to get it right.
I think it's actually a real... something that's made the suspension system in both AFL and NRL incorrect. These days, you'll see someone that, like you said, due to whatever circumstances, hurts somebody and that person's out, and then often that suspension gets increased. Or it happens, whereas it wouldn't have happened if that same play happens and that guy bounces up and plays the ball. Now, to me, it shouldn't be... regarding whatever the outcome is to that person. It should be the act itself. And it shits me to tears to see so many times when someone is intentionally trying to do something dirty, and fortunately for them, the person gets out of the way or what have you. But then someone accidentally slips up and hits them in a spot that wasn't right. And then, that person's hurt, then that person must be suspended. It should be the action first, and...
Because there was one on that same weekend, there was a Knights player, Cy Feedy, who got 5 weeks or something, and it was a proper coat hanger. Still it was reactionary, but it was that kind of thing. And, you compare 5 weeks to 3 weeks, you go, that is an incident, there's intent to throw the arm at him. Once again, it was reactionary, but, that deserves a lot more because there's more intent in it. So, I think Oates is just unlucky to break the jaw in that circumstance.
My opinion is that it should be the action, not the result. Because, like Holsh said, you could hit someone, intentionally try to hurt them. You don't actually hurt them, but you have to penalise the act to get the act out of the game rather than...
The NRL is terrible at consistency as well. And that's all fans want is consistency.
Some of the worst instances is when it actually isn't even from the impact. It's something like the person falls, hits their head.
Or bounces into another player who's there.
And then they're injured, and then it comes back that initial act gets more because of the injury. And I just... Anyway.
Speaking of Oates being injured, he was my try scorer as well. So I don't think that's going to go too well. So there's your mate getting mine out. And another thing on Broken Jaws, news that John Sattler passed away today at 80 years old. I think he had dementia. There's no suggestion, I suppose, that it was CTE related. But, he's famous for breaking his jaw, I think in the 1970 grand final, playing on. It was early in the game, so he played on the rest of the game. And as someone who has broken their jaw, I had it swinging at one stage. I got into the ambulance. It was a wait to get to the ambulance, but once I was in there, it was the most intense pain I've ever felt. It was horrible. So to think that he played another 70 minutes of contact rugby league in the 70s when, you might call it rugby league now, but back then it wasn't good. He would have been targeted as well. So quite sad news. So I picked Cleary for the Dally M. I think it's a pretty safe bet, as far as I think you'd find that a lot of people would have tipped Cleary as well. I went the Sharks as well for the premiership. Now, they are 1 and 2 at the moment. I kind of did that on the back of Hines. He hasn't played yet this year, so they've had one tight win over the Eels and then a loss to the Raiders, and I can't remember what the round 1 game was, but not looking good at the moment, but Hines should be back shortly, so hopefully kicks them into gear.
He won the Dally M last year?
He did, yes. So,
by a long way.
He did, yeah. So that's what I based that. They got a good team that's kind of seemed to be on the rise as well. Signing-wise, not a huge amount for them, but a good bunch of young players coming through at the same time. Okay. So that pretty much wraps us up for the week.
That does.
Anything else?
Yeah, nothing else I can think of.
Now you got to say the line, Bart.
Okay, what's the line? Okay, thanks for listening. So subscribe, YouTube, give us a rating on iTunes, on the podcast app. But until then, we'll see you next week, and keep tipping, keep drinking. Pew 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 pew.